And if we can't answer all the questions tonight, there's a way of capturing all the questions, and hopefully we'll be able to select the ones that aren't repeated too many times, and we'll be able to get answers to you from at some point afterwards, if that's okay. So, without further ado, just kick you off. Claire's asked, are you going to cover questions that have been emailed in as requested?
Yes.
Great, cool, lovely. Right, thank you very much. Over to you then. Over to you then, Spot.
Okay, I'm just going to do a bit of screen sharing, and we've got a PowerPoint just to make some nice pretty pictures whilst we're doing this. So just give me 2 minutes whilst I just launch this, and then we'll go from there. Hi everyone, lovely to see you all. Maybe not actually see you all, but welcome and thank you for everybody joining. Thanks for that, Polly. I'm just going to run through a few bits before I hand over to James and Karen. This we just want to say, so it's more of film, TV and commercial shooting guidelines, to say that if you want to keep up the latest, you can go to the hairandmakeupbranch.org.uk and you'll find all the latest shooting guidelines there. We try to keep it updated whenever there are changes. If not, you can go to each of these separate websites and you'll find guidelines to help you. PowerPoint now isn't working, thank you. Any questions after this session? If we haven't actually answered them all properly for you, this is the email address, and Sammy, our secretary, will pop this down in the chat box, so to make sure that you've got this. This is BECTUWEBINAR@gmail.com. You can ask any questions there after the session. Please note that we've consulted several health and safety officers to bring this information to you. Use it only as a guide along with the BFC, BECTU, APA, HSE, PHE guidelines. That's the British Film Commission, BECTU, APA's commercials, Health and Safety Executive, Public Health England's guidelines. Your employer will always build your production health and safety protocols. All we're saying to everyone is use multiple defences to minimise risk and build confidence. You'll hear some terminology as we go through this. Sterilisation, which is the killing of organisms such as bacteria, fungi, parasites and virus. Disinfecting, the elimination of most harmful microorganisms from surfaces and objects. Close contact, at the moment, at this very moment, it's classified as spending 15 minutes within a 1 to 2 metre space of someone. And when it's cast and it's got an asterisk, you know that we're also including stunts and background artists in this. So I'm now going to hand over to Karen, who is going to welcome James.
Thanks, Bob. And really all I need to say is thank you so much to James. James is very kindly giving us his time and expertise, and I can't tell you how grateful we are for that, James. And you got the floor. Off you go. Thanks.
Aaron, as Polly said earlier, I work for First Option Safety as one of the health and safety consultants, and currently working with Karen on Jurassic World. So slowly trying to get everything back up and running, and yeah, we're up to already 500-600 crew members, so yeah, it's all a good big learning process. And specifically we've been looking at hair and makeup because that has its own challenges, along with some of the other departments. So yeah, I've been working closely with Karen to try and make sure we create a safe working environment for both her and her staff, and obviously all the cast and extras crowd that will be coming through all of her tents and trailers over the next few months.
Okay, so this is the first slide, like how do you start your day? So we're sort of looking at our 20 principles and running through that because most of the questions seem to come out of that, and James is just going to chat to us about this. So over to you, James. Yeah,
so obviously every production's different, and depending whether you're a big feature film down to a small commercial, productions won't always have a dedicated health and safety officer. I think that's beginning to change now with obviously COVID-19. A lot of people want to have a a COVID-19 officer. So that could either be a health and safety advisor, so like myself being on set, or it'll be someone else, and maybe someone from a locations department. They might take on the role as a COVID-19 manager, which I'm sure you've seen in some of the different guidance documents. And ultimately, this is all to help advise you, your departments, the production as a whole, on the best protocols to implement for your production, because every production is going to be different. Obviously, something like Jurassic World, with the budget it has, it can do certain things, whereas the smaller productions, things might be slightly trickier in terms of what you need to do, but ultimately it all comes down to the same thing: social distancing and hand washing. So yes, ideally you'd have a dedicated person to help put all your protocols in place, all the risk assessments. I'm sure you all enjoy reading, and all the different procedures as well. Point 2, in terms of fully trained, ideally every member of crew should receive some form of training, just to review the guidelines that are going to be in place specific for your production. Because as I said, every production is going to be different. We shouldn't try and have a blanket system of protocols in place, because some things will work on a big production, other things will work on a smaller production. So trying to have all your trained staff. So we, on Jurassic World, for example, we've been doing COVID training on Zoom for everyone. So something like that could be implemented across multiple departments. And obviously you're getting this today, which is a kind of form of training to a degree as well. And all the training will cover HSE guidance, BFC, APA, and then specifics for your production, because there will be some slight changes in terms of what you can do for your production as a whole. And then point 3, it's important that you do, as a department, so hair and makeup, you do have them health and safety briefings each morning. And that can be your HOD, supervisor, just that reminder to everyone about cleanliness, washing hands, washing equipment, making sure you're wearing all the correct protective equipment, depending on what your risk assessment has stated. And just because the way we're going to be working is going to be slightly different, especially if you're dealing with lots of extras in a day, for example. There might be certain things that you now have to do just to create a safe working environment, not only for yourself, but for all them people now visiting your workshop. Ultimately, I think hair and makeup, you're quite good in general in terms of good hygiene practices. So I think a lot of what we're going to be discussing today isn't going to be too shocking for you. And I think it'll be quite easy for you to just get in that way of working. It might slow down certain things. There might be some slight changes, but ultimately I think it will be, I think as we've shown on Jurassic, and I'm sure Karen will attest to it, I don't think there's going to be too much different in terms of how you work. It's just a few little measures to reduce that risk of transmission within your own departments.
Okay, next slide. Thank you for that.
So yeah, in terms of hair and makeup rooms, whether it's workshops, office spaces, wherever it might be where you're working, trailers as well. Currently, social distancing is key, and at the moment it's 2 meters within the UK. Various different parts of the world have down to 1 meter, 1.5 meters, but UK is 2 meters. I know there's lots of discussions at the moment that could change very soon, down to maybe 1 meter. But I think there's going to be some caveats added to when you can go down to 1 meter. They might need to put in certain protocols to allow that. And you've got to remember also, productions might want you to keep at 2 meters. I know some studios are requiring 2 meters across all of their productions worldwide. So it might not necessarily mean your production can go down to 1 meter. And the whole basis of 2 meters is that for where you are from someone, the less likelihood that the disease is going to be transmitted should someone have the virus within your workplace and not showing symptoms. So whenever you are working, wherever it is, just take that time to measure where you're going to have someone seated or where you're going to be working, that there is at least 2 meters currently between your next workstation. I know if you're working in existing places that it might be difficult, trailers, very limited in space, but this is where it comes down to each production, assessing it on a case-by-case basis. Do you need larger work areas? Do you need to get more trailers in place to create a safer work environment? Because if you can't keep these 2 meter distances, there are certain things you can put in place, but that should be the first port of call, is trying to get that 2 meter distance, because that's going to be the best thing, along with ventilation, in terms of reducing your risk to getting COVID-19. And then sanitizing work areas as well. So that's pretty much constantly cleaning throughout the workday. If you've got someone coming in, do your thing, and then once they leave, just have a quick wipe down of all work surfaces that they may have touched. The seat, you may consider putting some form of cover on seats, which can be disposable, so you can just quickly remove it. So the one thing I think about is like tattoo parlors. So putting cling film or some other disposable, like a disposable paper or something, just protects that surface, because having to clean the whole seat after every use can take a bit of time. So that's one thing to maybe start thinking about. And obviously then all the different disinfectant sprays that you can get just to spray down on the workbenches, the seats themselves, and then your sanitizing equipment for any tools that you've been using as well. Just give them a good clean, so then when you have the next person coming through, you've got a fresh set. It's a fresh environment basically, as if they were the first person in that day. And then point 5, yes, just continuing, keeping everything clean, sanitize between each cast member. So obviously when a new cast member comes in, the last thing they want is you reusing any equipment that's been used on someone who's just gone before them. So that's using all the different things, so like barbicide that you may use, any sanitizing sprays that are around, all the disinfectant wipes, alcohol sprays, alcohol wipes. Just using them regularly will allow you to keep things clean and safe for someone else within your work area. And then,
sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Karen, you've got a question. We had a question about this.
Yeah, a common question that's been sent in is how long can the virus survive on surfaces?
Yes, it's, as I'm sure you're all aware of, the science is constantly evolving with this, and some things suggest some surfaces can last only a few hours. So like clothing, for example, it might not last as long on that. And then if you go up to a really smooth surface like glass or metal, it could potentially last up to 72 hours. Things like cardboard, it can maybe last 24 hours. So it is tricky trying to determine how long it could last, but I think as long as you are continuously cleaning your equipment and your work areas, the risk of transmission through that is vastly reduced. I know when you get deliveries in, you then need to think about how you manage deliveries, because obviously we aren't fully aware of what Amazon, Royal Mail, what procedures they're put in place. You're relying on people to keep their own standards of hygiene. I think it's just, as long as you keep washing your hands, wash your equipment, wash your work areas, the risk of transmission is vastly reduced. So I would just say continually clean.
Sammy's going to put a link in there, which we found quite interesting, which was from the Lancet, which was talking about the various hours and times that the virus can actually last on various surfaces. So that's quite interesting for everybody. So if you look down in the chat box, that will go up there for everybody for a nice read later on. Next slide, hygiene and multiple defences.
Yeah, so one of the most interesting things that's coming out of the current research is that ventilation could be actually one of the biggest or best things that you could try and put into your workplace, because like my office here, it's not that big, but if you had 2 people in, which you could have with social distancing, if one of you did have the virus, you weren't showing symptoms, so then you weren't wearing any face coverings or anything like that. Obviously, when they're breathing, or if they cough, sneeze, they're going to release potentially some of that virus into the atmosphere. And we then start talking about something called the viral load. So that the amount of virus in your work atmosphere will start increasing over the course of a 10, 12-hour day, wherever it is. And if you haven't got any fresh air coming in, it then doesn't get dispersed, doesn't get diluted. So then it just increases your likelihood of getting COVID-19, even though you are keeping 2 or more meters away. So keeping windows and doors open, that is first port of call. I know a lot of your makeup trailers tend to not have any windows in. They'll have maybe one door in and out. So then, like for example, on Jurassic, we've been looking at how we can install additional extraction units. So we've done that in some of the trailers already. And that just allows us to change the air a certain number of hours. So we've been looking at trying to get 6 air changes per hour. So every 10 minutes, you'll have fresh air, like in your work environment, completely fresh air. And that's just constantly running. And it's not too major. It's similar to like a bathroom extractor. So if you keep that running and have your door open, You just get nice fresh air coming in. And then if you are lucky enough to have windows as well, just have the windows open. And then when you can get out to have fresh air, please do that. And then any offices that you might work in, if you're based in an office environment, or any temporary workshops, so like a marquee tent, it's going to be as simple as keep them doors open. Any at the sides of the marquee tent, if they can be removed to just get fresh air in, that's all just going to help create a much more pleasant work environment. And I know there's been a few questions regarding air conditioning units, because I think there was one random story that came out from, I think it was either China or Hong Kong, where some people got ill and it was suspected to be caused by the air conditioning units. When they actually looked into it, the air conditioning units weren't getting fresh air from outside. It was just purely recirculating in that work environment, and all the filters hadn't been replaced. So that's, air conditioning isn't like, it's not something you should just switch off. If it is purely recirculating, then yes, you may want to switch it off. But if it's getting fresh air from outside, the filters have been replaced, it's all working correctly, you are able to keep doors and windows open where possible. It's the risk of transmission that way is vastly reduced. But yeah, the main thing is to keep your windows and doors open where you can.
Can I ask a question? This is one question, because obviously multiple defences like hot soapy water washing, UV cabinets, IPA, ozones, autoclaves, barbicides and fogging. These are all cleaning and sterilising, disinfecting. Is there any other recommended one, or is it's about just multiple defences according to what you've got?
You can have, so like using like barbicide and alcohol wipes, for example. If you put things in that, then in theory, like barbicide has released something saying that's been approved by the EPA in America to use against coronavirus. So if you use that barbicide on something, then in theory it's gone. But then if you give it a quick wipe down, or then put it in a sterilising cabinet, you then just put more control measures to really reduce the chance of any virus being left on. Because yeah, when you wipe something down, for example, it's easy to miss something. But then if you have a sterilising cabinet or any form of fogging or anything like that, it's going to do the job. Just be aware of ozone. It's been bandied about quite a bit. I'd be quite careful about that. The evidence around ozone is limited, and ozone is obviously can be quite harmful in certain situations. So I would try and use other things than ozone. And likewise with UV cabinets as well. UV cabinets are great. Just make sure you're using them correctly, because obviously UV can be dangerous in itself. Be very wary of any. I've seen some productions talk about UV wands. So these are handheld UV lights. They're quite questionable in terms of how powerful they are and how effective they are, particularly if you're buying them from the likes of online marketplaces like Amazon. So I'd try and avoid using them. I'd go down the more proper cabinets, sterilisation cabinets, and like autoclaves, and then things like barbicide, alcohol wipes, gels, wherever it might be. That they're going to be much more effective, much easier to use, and don't have the other health and safety issues that UV and ozone bring into play. So that's just something to bear in mind when you are working with them.
Thanks, James. There were so many questions about UV and UVC cabinets, and so if you have a dedicated, say, dental UV cabinet, how long should you leave products in there?
So it's one of these things that, again, the science isn't really there yet in terms of coronavirus. I think I've seen a lot of things that says 15 to 30 minutes using them, but I think it's all a case-by-case basis depending on what you're using. Speak to the manufacturers to see if they have any advice, see what, particularly if the ones that are used in dentist practices, try and speak to if you can get into contact with a dental practice, just to see what they tend to be doing, because they're going to be the best people to get that advice from. Because at the moment, when you do look online, there's all sorts of different viewpoints on this. And particularly for hair and makeup, at the moment, there isn't really that level of research gone into our relatively niche work environment. It's more for a medical setting. But I think it does tend to be, from what I've read, between 15 and 30 minutes.
Because that's what they used to always say in the beauty trade. You would always tell us that's how long you had to put it in and then you had a rotation of items, you know, when you're doing treatments. We've got 1, 2, 3 links that Sammy's going to put up, which is a whole load of information on UV and basically just everything that they've, as James has been talking about, but it's just a longer read for you, and it might help you when you go to your next job. So Sammy, if you pop those links up, that would be great. Should we just talk about hazard bins? That fantastic topic.
So, because in our work environment, in theory, we are not dealing with anyone with coronavirus. Everyone is coming to work healthy. So in terms of face coverings, masks, gloves, it can just be put into a standard waste disposal bin. It doesn't need to be classified as hazardous waste or anything like that. All I would say is try and have bins with the lids on, and that people put them in, they don't leave them. A number of times I do visits around site and you see used masks lying around, and you know, it's obviously not fair for cleaners or anyone else to have to pick them up. So I would just say have a closed bin, put them in the bin, and then just empty the bin as and when required. You don't need to do anything more additional than that, as long as you wash your hands once you've taken it off after you put it in the bin. Again, that just really reduces that risk of any transmissions from that. And if you are dealing with bins, like emptying them and tying them up, maybe just wash your hands before you've done it, wash your hands afterwards once you've tied up and put it in the bin. And I think you don't need to do much more than that.
Okay, next slide. Tools and equipment.
Yeah, so ideally you would be using single-use things, and then, because this again, it's just reducing that risk completely. You've used it on one person, then you can get rid of it. So particularly, yeah, like things like gowns, towels, you wouldn't. And then obviously things that can't be single-use, it's then just making sure they're easy to clean or can easily be sterilised, and you've got the right procedures in place to clean them. So things like towels, for example, as long as you're washing them properly, suitable temperature, you've got detergents, all of that kind of stuff, then they will be safe to be used on another person. You just need to go through that correct procedure, basically. So just make sure that within your productions that you have written procedures for all of these situations if you are having to use things that aren't quite single use. And then as long as we're all on the same page, production's happy, the health and safety advisor's happy with everything as well, then things could be reused, but where possible, try and use single use wherever you can. And at least try and avoid any shared equipment between different makeup artists or whatever it is. Just so you've got your personal equipment, you can really make sure you're keeping it clean, and that's safe for the next person coming in that you're using that equipment on.
And Karen, you want to talk about sustainability here on this?
Yeah, with PPE, our and single-use item, it goes against everything we ever try to achieve with having a lesser carbon footprint, and so sustainability has become very much a forefront of thinking. So as a group of people, we have a sustainability group now where we are welcoming all people to come and join. As members, you are more than welcome to come and join us, help build a directory for sustainable, which we can then give to BAFTA to circulate as part of their Albert incentive. So yeah, single-use items is something that we have to consider, but we are trying to do it. I'm very fortunate that I've got very supportive UPM who is helping me be as sustainable as we possibly can on this production. So we will be using biodegradable where we can, and being conscious about how we dispose of our PPE, and Tetra packet, which might then go into a Tetra cycle. So, you know, it is something to be thinking about. So it's a kind of like a sidebar, but I just wanted to bring it up at this point.
And if anyone's interested in joining the hair and makeup branch subgroup on sustainability, all they need to do is just email. So that email, Sammy, if you drop or Leanne, if you just drop the email address in the chat box, and just put your subject down as sustainability group. It's a really active and a very lively group, and the directory, we have to do a shout out for this first of all, don't we, Karen? Helena Card started the directory, the sustainability directory, in lockdown, and the group have come together and they've all been working on it and building on it. It's going to be an amazing document once it's finished. I think number 10 speaks for itself. We'll move on to the next slide. Incomings.
So if you're hiring from anywhere, hopefully, obviously, I think it's good to try and discuss with them what the protocols are in place. Some places may have nothing, and they may just send it out, and obviously we can't necessarily rely on them putting in their measures. So for a lot of departments on this production, we've been looking at areas where things can be delivered, so they can maybe be left for 72 hours. So then obviously that will lead to a deactivated virus, and so low risk to anyone handling them. Otherwise, it's then trying to minimize who needs to deal with any equipment being delivered in, making sure you wash your hands before handling, wash your hands afterwards, consider wiping delivery boxes down as well, so with disinfectant sprays or whatever it might be. In some productions, again, like Jurassic, we've been looking at fogging systems. So this just creates a really fine fog, which just envelops wherever it is whatever object you want to spray it on. And we've been using it on pretty much anything. So clothing, it's been proven like it's quite effective on clothing, and obviously cardboard boxes, any props, anything basically. And it just has a really good disinfectant properties. It's virucidal, so it meets all the various European standards for viruses. So it's been shown to kill various different types of coronavirus. So the assumption is that it will work against COVID-19. So all of these things can be used on deliveries. Again, it's a very low risk route of transmission, but as long as you just make sure you wash your hands before handling it, wipe it down whilst you're handling it, and wash your hands afterwards before you do anything else, again, that risk it will be then vastly reduced. Just try and maybe have a designated area where you can deal with your deliveries rather than just having it plonked right in the work.
Fantastic, thank you. Just want to go on to this one, which is quite a big one about hand washing, because that's what you've been talking about an awful lot. And
yeah. So in terms of hand washing, it's either a mixture of washing your hands with water and soap. So that's the best thing you can do, because you can get under your nails, all the nooks and crannies in your hands and things like that. Obviously, some areas, if you're on set, for example, then the facilities like that may not be available. So then you need to look at, it then comes down to alcohol hand sanitizer. So the recommendation from the World Health Organization is 60% minimum. And then a lot of productions are looking at 70%, so that's widely available as well. But anything above 60% will be suitable. You just need to then wash your hands in the same way as you would if you're using soap and water. So wash your hands for 20 seconds, sing happy birthday to yourself, just to make sure you've done it long enough. And again, just even if you are using alcohol sanitizer, make sure you try and get under your nails and things like that. Normally it's about 2 pumps of the dispenser to get enough sanitizer on your hands. Just rub it in until it's completely dry, and then your hands are clean to then continue working.
Well, this is something we've always been doing, haven't we? So we could show it at the beginning, show everybody this. Right, I'm just conscious of time. Want to make sure we get to the open Q&A so we can get to the slides. The next one, which we said, which everybody needs to be wary of, from wearing masks and extra overwashing of hands as well. So contact dermatitis, and you said, James, about the fact that you're wearing a mask all the time, you need to have lip balm because you've always got dry lips.
Yeah, I found from wearing some of the face coverings, just because if you are wearing it for extended periods of time, it becomes very hot and it's horrible when you're wearing the mask. So if you are prone to your lips cracking or anything like that, I would advise you have some lip balm just to keep on top of it, and just try and get fresh air so you can take that face covering off. Get a fresh one before, when it starts feeling damp or wet, just get a new one. It'll just make things a lot more comfortable for you, and it just reduces that risk of you getting horrible skin and lips. I'm sure you've seen all the pictures of some of the NHS staff, just because they are having to wear them so often. And dermatitis is potentially an issue because you are using alcohol hand sanitizer all the time. And I see someone in one of the chats, someone said about you shouldn't be using it more than 5 times a day because it then becomes less effective as well. So yeah, you got to be wary with alcohol sanitizer because yeah, it can be quite nasty, especially if you do have sensitive skin. So that's where if you can get access to water and soap, I would try and use that if you can, not necessarily rely on hand sanitizer. But the worst comes to worst, just use hand sanitizer. And maybe just think about moisturizers for your hands if you do have sensitive skin. And if you are showing symptoms of dermatitis, speak to, if you've got a unit nurse, a medic on your production, speak to them as soon as possible.
That's great. Thank you for that. Okay, on to PPE, that wonderful subject you love so much.
Well, can I just interject here for a minute? Lots and lots of questions coming back. Can we just go over fogging?
Fogging.
What is fogging? How do people get fogging? What's the chemical structure of fogging?
So yes, fogging is it's disinfectant spray, which then is put into there's various different fogging devices. Some of them look very much like a backpack, like Ghostbuster style system. So they're proven very popular across our departments, and it basically gets heated up, similar to like an Atmos machine, SFX might use, and it just lets out a really fine fog or mist of the disinfectant. So then it lands on a surface and provides a disinfectant, does a disinfectant job on any surfaces that it lands on. So one of the ones we've been using is called Celgene Ultra, and you also get Celgene Extreme, and they've all been tested to in terms of virucidal properties, and some of them also are good against like fungus and various other things as well, bacteria. There's also one called Zuno, which is proving quite popular. I think TfL and a lot of the train lines are using that as well. So yeah, so you can either go down the spray route or you can go down the fogging route. Spray route leaves a bit more of a wet surface, whereas a fogging, because of how fine it is, it doesn't leave much of a residue. It doesn't make things really damp, but it still provides really good disinfectant properties. So it is a good option for productions to think about. And we've been getting them from our cleaning company that's working for this production, but you can get them elsewhere. There's lots of them around. They are proven hard to get hold of, just because lots of people want them. All industries are looking at them because of how effective they can be. And you can fill up big rooms, trailers, wherever it might be, very quickly to provide a clean working environment.
So you do this at the end of the day?
Yeah, so you could do it. So like we've been looking at, we've got cleaners who will come at the end of the day once everyone's out. They will do it. So they're wearing face coverings, overalls where needed, and they'll just spray. And that then, I think they normally say within 45 minutes, people can then come into that work environment. But you can also use it in smaller. So we've been looking at spray, like cabins, so containers, shipping containers, where we could put clothing, for example, on rails, and you could just spray in that, and then you can leave it overnight, and then it's provided, all the clothing is then disinfected.
All right, so we could do that on our wet weather gear then?
Yeah, you could do it on all that. And then we're doing some tests soon to see if it works on wigs.
Yeah, tomorrow.
Them. So some of the substances we've been using are bleach-free. They don't contain any real nasties that can be used in food preparation areas. So we're hoping it's not going to have too much of an impact on things like hair and wigs and things like that.
That's great. And any information that you've got, any links to any of these companies, maybe what we could do is if we take the links off you afterwards, and we'll make sure that it's up on the website so everybody can access that. We'll make sure there's an open document there so everybody can investigate their own fogging. Okay, is that it, Karen? Because I know you're monitoring the questions that are coming.
I'm trying to answer as many as I can to go through them.
I'm sorry, I can't answer because if I do that, we lose the screen. Okay, so PPE.
Yeah, so there's been lots of discussions about this. Various different studios, so NBC, Universal, Disney, and all the others have maybe slightly different views on when personal protective equipment might need to be used. But I think the hair and makeup, the general consensus is that when you're working with someone else, you will need to wear a face covering, so maybe like a 3-ply mask as a minimum. Some productions are requesting an N95 mask, or which is equivalent to a European standard FFP2 mask. So it's like a dust mask that you might have seen before. And then a face visor as well. So that again just reduces the risk of any transmission through the eyes, and again just reduces the amount they potentially breathe in, because masks, face coverings aren't 100% effective, but with all of these different measures, again it's reducing that risk of any transmission. So the more you can put in place, the less likelihood of you getting anything in terms of COVID-19.
And always change between.
Yeah, so like again, just face covering, take it off when a new person comes in. Face visor, just give it a quick wipe down with any alcohol wipes you've got, any spray, disinfectant sprays. Just make sure it's dry, and then it's safe for then the next person coming in. Ultimately, if no one's touching your mask, no one else is touching your mask, the risk of transmission is lower anyway. But I think just to make everyone feel comfortable, because you're going to be so close to them, doing hair and makeup, you're going to be well within a metre of someone, that just having that fresh covering will make you feel better, and probably will make the cast, the extra crowd, wherever it is, they'll make them feel more comfortable as well.
Should we, the other big question that always keeps coming up in RIN, is about wearing gloves. Are there any questions on that, Karen? Because I know people have been asking.
Yeah, gloves is always coming up, but I believe the answer is no, we don't wear gloves. Hand washing is much better.
Yeah, so in general, hand washing is going to be far better, but I think if you would normally use gloves for any type of application or any type of job, continue to wear them, but again, just make it one use only. So use the nitrile gloves, latex-free gloves that you can get, and once you're finished with someone, put them in the bin, wash your hands, and just remember to wash your hands before you put the gloves on as well. Because yeah, we're trying to avoid people just relying on gloves, because we get a false sense of security and we forget to wash our hands with them as well. So yeah, just keep it to one use.
Have you got any questions, Karen? Because I noticed the numbers went up really quickly.
It's another fogging question. So it's from Rachel. So are we as makeup artists actually supposed to deal with the fogging of equipment, etc.? The only reason I ask is because my dad is actually a fogging expert and works within contamination, and you have to wear a full-on spacesuit, forensic scientist-type clothing. Are makeup artists expected to do this, or will an expert be needed for each and every production?
I personally would recommend that productions get a cleaning team to look after it, just because there's too much chance of maybe people not being trained to use the machine properly, use the correct concentration of disinfectant as well. You obviously don't want to be using pure disinfectant that hasn't been watered down or anything like that, as per instructions. So yeah, I wouldn't expect you, as a health and safety advisor, I wouldn't expect individuals like hair and makeup to do it themselves. Obviously, some departments may want to do it themselves, but then you get the correct training. So yeah, I wouldn't expect production shouldn't expect you to look after it yourself without the correct instruction and training. And obviously the correct PPE as well.
And if you're working in theatre and you haven't got windows to open, what can the underground workers do to support ventilation?
So there are like some like air filters you can get, so like freestanding air filters, machines that will just clean the air. You just need to make sure they have the correct HEPA filters, so the size of the filters will filter out potentially the small size of a virus, and that'll just create clean air coming through. And then it's just then speaking to obviously each theatre to see what else they can do within that work environment, because it is going to be tricky. That's when social distancing will be vital. And then thinking maybe about wearing face coverings, because of the nature of the confined environment, so social distancing, face coverings will be vital. But then it's speaking to them to see if you can get more form of air cleaners within that work environment. It is a tricky setting, and it'll be a case-by-case situation, I think, for them types of work environments.
Can you just explain what HEPA means?
So it's high efficiency
particular air.
Yeah, and yeah, you get these in like if you've seen like a Dyson advert, the vacuum cleaners, they have them. and air conditioning units might have them as well. And it's just when the air gets pulled through that filter, the filter will then capture any contaminants within that. So it's just making sure the filter itself is suitable for, because you get different ranges of filters, and you just need to make sure the size of the filter is suitable for potential viruses and other contaminants.
Okay, I'll move on to the next slide. We're just coming to the end of this.
Here's a funny one. Okay, so you're a glasses wearer and the glass is constantly messed up when wearing a mask. Any tips?
So a little tip is to try and wash your glasses in a bowl of hot, warm, soapy water, and just rub it for a few seconds. Just make sure that you got on all the surfaces, and you then take the glasses out, dry it with a soft cloth, and it leaves a thin layer of surfactant on your lenses, and it will reduce the likelihood of it fogging up. So it's similar to if any of you are swimmers with swimming goggles. I always used to get told if you spit in it, rub it, and then it will stop it fogging up. Obviously, don't spit on your glasses because that's a potential COVID-19 risk issue. But washing it in soapy water helps. And yeah, using shaving foam can help as well. Just rub shaving foam on it, wash it, and then you might have to repeat it a few times over the course of the day, but yeah, it'll be less annoying than it fogging up every time you breathe out.
Silicone, possibly?
Sorry?
A little bit of silicone?
Yeah, that could help. Yeah. I think it's just, there'll be all sorts, I think, that you could use. So I think it's just, see what works best, I think, for each of you.
Okay, so this was just something we just put in for ourselves, obviously, because when you're making a chart and it's really just, if somebody's got to have lenses, you've got to make sure you've got a lens technician coming in, or the teeth technician coming in, or your wig maker coming in. And we just put this in just to remind us when we write on the charts for the actors, every other person that is attached to that actor. So it's like us having a log. So that's what number 17 is. And number 18, I think you've already covered in the fact that obviously everything has to be fresh and new, and or decanted and sterilised and disinfected. And everybody has their own bags, everything, whoever it is, whether it's cast, stunts, background, everybody has their own, whether it's from a master bottle decanted down into little bottles. Is that correct, Karen, as well? You've been doing...
Yeah, I've been, we've got large quantities just to save our plastics as well, and then decanting stuff out. So, yeah.
So this is, we do this all the time, but it's just to actually say number 17, make sure you put in all the other people that are attached, because everybody's got to be logged next to your actors and stunts. So communication. Now, James, this is where you love talking about your bubbles, pods, zones. Okay. Every production has a different version of this. Is that correct?
Yeah, so a lot of them have been, bubbles, cohorts, pods, wherever you want to call it. And ultimately what it is trying to minimize how much different departments deal with one another and mixing, because the whole principle behind it is that if the worst did happen and someone within a department got COVID-19 confirmed symptoms or a confirmed positive test, we try and limit the impact it has on your department and the production as a whole. So if you only ever need to work in your one workshop or one trailer for a day, and you don't need to go anywhere else, then don't go anywhere else. Just stay within your work area. And some productions will be doing like a shooting bubble. So we've called it our green zone. So that is for shooting crew only. If you are not part of the green zone, you won't be allowed access. And then ultimately, if you only need to be on there for a few minutes and you finished your job, then leave. Don't hang around like people normally do. And it's all just about reducing that risk of transmission spreading across the production, because I'm sure you all heard at the beginning of this pandemic in the UK, it's all about the R number. So, and this is how many people you can infect if you have COVID. So at the beginning, it tended to be about 3-4 people one person could infect at a time. So obviously you can imagine on a big production, it could spread very quickly. So within your own departments as well, try and think how you can bubble your own department. So you have bubbles within bubbles. The whole practicality of it is difficult, and we're going to be seeing very soon how effective it is. but it's just something to really be aware of. Just try and minimize who you are coming into contact, particularly close contact within a confined area like a trailer, for example. Only certain people should be allowed on there. People shouldn't just be coming on there to have a natter or anything like that.
Yeah, so it just comes down to getting the permission and booking it in, really.
Yeah.
Bob, did we put all the stuff about IPA?
No, that's coming. That's the next lot of questions.
Right,
I'm just going to stop sharing my screen. I might come back to it in a minute. So we've got a whole list of questions, haven't we, Karen? Which, wow, how many questions? Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. Yeah, we're trying our best to get everything.
I think as fast as I can.
Yeah. So James, there was one big question that we kept getting repeatedly, which was which percentage of IPA should we be using? And at the moment we're seeing 75%.
Yeah, like, I think, as I said earlier, I think as long as it's over 60%, then it will be fine. Obviously, the higher you can get, then in theory, the better it will have a result. But I think the difference between 60 and 75 is minimal. As long as we're just keeping on top of it, that'll ensure that things are suitably cleaned.
We've got somebody here asking about airbrushing, which is something we haven't touched on at all. Have you
incorporate hairdryers into that as well?
Yes, because obviously airborne or aerosol. So we've had questions on, does hairspray affect, because hairspray is obviously spraying, hair dryers, and now here one with airbrushing. So I think that would that all come under one with airborne, and how you feel about that?
Like, I think, I've spoken to Karen about this previously. I think it's one of them things that, unfortunately, I don't think there is any current investigation into it. And I think it'd be hard to say either way. But I think from my point of view, in risk assessing it, I think the risk is low. As long as you have got all the right protocols in place of keeping things clean, you're wearing face coverings, you're the person you're working on. If they can wear a face covering at certain times, then have the face covering on. We've got a visor on, and that will just reduce that risk of transmission through that to such a low level. Obviously, it's never going to be zero, but I don't think it's going to massively increase your risk. And as long as you've got good ventilation, air changes, wherever it might be, again, your work environment's already pretty safe. So I don't think it's going to make things much worse.
That's fantastic. Sammy, would you put up onto the chat box all the links on IPA, which we found loads of information, because it just clears things up for everybody and is really helpful. The next big question really is about wigs. Now we've had so many wig storage, hair, but it's sterilising and making sure your facial and your wigs are clean. And how can we keep it that way?
Yeah, it's going to be a tricky one. I think if fogging works and it doesn't damage them or affect them negatively, then that's a good option. And then it's obviously limiting who handles them, and then making sure your hands are clean before you handle them. When you wash them before you take them off as well. And then just thinking about where you store them within your work environment. If it can be in a sealed area, so where people aren't just generally breathing, so if it can be a sealed cupboard or anything like that. Obviously, it doesn't need to be airtight, because that's not going to be practical. But as long as it's just a cupboard or something like that where it can be stored, or a cover put over them, and that'll just help. And then if things can be steamed or anything like that as well, I know could again affect things like curls and all of that. It's just all of these different things could be looked into, and it's going to be a case by case basis. Unfortunately, I don't think there's not a magic bullet that can be applied to every single production or work environment for wigs and wherever else it might be.
So again, our wig ovens, because we have them at a high temperature, will the high temperature help kill?
Like, it's certainly, like, how high does the temperature get? Something like
they can get quite hot. It depends on which cabinets you have, to be honest with you.
So again, like, unfortunately, I had a look earlier on about temperatures in relation to COVID-19, and again, the science is varies widely. Some people say you need to get over 100 degrees to try and kill the virus. Some people are saying 60 degrees. And then it comes down to having multiple measures in place. So having the high temperature is certainly not going to do anything bad to the virus, and it will help. But then as long as you're having good hygiene in place as well when handling the wigs, using maybe fogging, steaming, whatever it might be, that's all going to help reduce that risk of transmission from a wig. I think the risk is low, but yeah, it's never going to be zero.
So Karen, you're doing tests tomorrow, is that correct, with fogging and wigs?
Yeah.
That's exciting. So I just saw one here, which I just wanted to, this is from Sarah Pickering. Has any testing been done with the gamma eradication? Is that what it's right? And is it available? As I understand, this is the only fully penetrable sterilisation that can fully sterilise kits.
I haven't come across that. It sounds like obviously gamma rays are the most dangerous in terms of radiation because it will go through like surfaces and like right through it. So I imagine it does work. I haven't seen it myself, and I wouldn't know how safe it would be to use within, or how easy it would be to use within our type of work environment. And I think I saw someone mention about UV light. And you are correct that it'll only be the surface that's exposed to will be cleaned. If there's any nooks and crannies that you aren't able to get that UV light into, then that won't be cleaned. So yeah, that's another reason why UV, I wouldn't necessarily rely on it purely by itself. Washing it, cleaning it yourself with wipes and sprays, that's going to be more effective than just relying on UV.
Okay, I'm just running through here. So many
while you're running through, do you remember I sent you toucan stats about the, I think is it hydrostatic electricity cleaners, the eco cleaners? On principle, I know that toucan's waiting for its EN number, but in principle, are they a good form of cleaning?
Yes, I think so, yeah. I think it will do the same job. I think because a lot of products that are out there don't even have EM standards yet because they haven't been able to be tested against viruses, and even ones that have all the EN numbers haven't necessarily been tested against COVID-19 because no one's had access to the virus to test anything, to test the products against it. But the assumption is that if it has been used on other coronaviruses, because flu is a coronavirus, and other viruses like it, so other enveloped viruses or norovirus or something like that, then the assumption is that it will work against COVID-19, and it will break it down and make it safe to use. So I think it will be suitable.
There's more questions about fogging. Is it worth individuals buying fogging machines for their own kits?
I wouldn't.
I think it's just trying to get hold of one at the moment.
Yeah,
they are hard to get hold of. They're not cheap as well, with all the disinfectant sprays. I think in terms of your own equipment, I think as long as you're able to just keep things wiped down and things like that, I wouldn't necessarily worry about getting your own fogging kit. And hopefully more productions will get them anyway, and then you can get your things cleaned as and when needed.
Somebody's asking here, the APA guidelines say we should wear a bodysuit as part of our two-tier PPE. What do you think about this, James?
So I guess it's one of them other added protocols and systems to reduce that risk of transmission. I think if you're wearing a face covering, a face visor, all the other hygiene things in place, and then I think an overall isn't absolutely necessary. I'm not going to go against the APA, but I know a lot of the other guidance documents from like the BFC and NBC Universal, some of the other studios, they don't require people to wear overalls. I think it's a case-by-case basis, I think, for you. It depends what your production's doing in terms of managing this risk. So like Jurassic, we've got temperature checks, COVID-19 testing. So we're already putting more in place to reduce our risk. So then certain PPE isn't absolutely necessary. So again, it's all production specific and how it's been assessed by the health and safety advisor.
That's great. People have been asking about their own clothing. So it's about before you go back home, should you change before you go home? That's been a question everybody's like unsure about.
Yeah, again, I think the risk of transmission from your own clothing, if all the other measures are in place, is again vastly reduced. You could maybe think about wearing like aprons or something, just to at least protect your front of your clothing, which can then be disposed of. And then I think when you get home, I think, yeah, there's various school of thoughts whether you need to change your clothing every single day. And I think that's probably over the top. And washing them as soon as you get home, I think it is over the top. And like personally, I don't wash my clothes. What I've worn today, I'm not going to be washing tonight. And when I go to the supermarket, I'm not washing all my clothes that I've had at the supermarket. I think the risk is from that is vastly reduced. So personally, I wouldn't. But, yeah.
Is there any other questions anybody else would like to ask James? So we've got two questions here. One that says, how do I clean eyeshadow palettes? And the other one that says, are we talking Milton's baby sterilising liquid? So eyeshadow palettes, which of course is a dry, obviously multiple defences.
Yes, I think it's obviously making sure it's covered when you don't need it uncovered. Keep it as far away from like whoever you're applying it to, so you're not having it right next to their face or anything in your hands. And I think it's then making sure that one-use brushes, so you try and not double dipping and stuff like that. I don't know if you can then decant it into another product for one, like a container for one person. I'm not a hair and makeup person, like, so in terms of my experience with all of these individual pieces is quite limited. But yeah, I think it's just as long as you're keeping your good hygiene and not double dipping onto different people, I think the risk is again very low.
Okay, and what do you think about Milton's baby fluid for cleaning babies' bottles? That's what something
I can't say I've looked into it specifically, so I would need to look into that. But if it provides sterilising properties, then it could be an option. But yes, I would have to look into it.
Yeah, that's what they use in water, and when you sterilise baby bottles, you submerge it. It's quite an old way of.
I imagine it would work. Again, it probably doesn't advertise itself as being COVID-19 approved or anything like that, but I would say it's fine.
James from the theatre, Cynthia. I work in theatre, and there is no way that we will be able to respect the 2-metre rule because of how small the workspaces are in the small theatres. What can we do in the theatre industry to stay safe and work in these close spaces? Please keep in mind that we have to do quick changes that are as fast as 30 seconds, and we won't be able to sanitize spaces between these changes.
Yeah, so it is going to be really tricky. And I think first protocol would be looking at your workspaces individually, seeing what can be done as a starting point before you even start thinking about getting people in to apply hair and makeup to anyone. It's looking at how you can rearrange things to try and promote as much social distancing as possible. I know some places will inevitably there's only so much you can do, but it's can you work back to back, side to side, trying to avoid any face-to-face contact. And where that can't be achieved, then it's going to be a case of having to wear face coverings in all instances, and just to reduce that risk of transmission. Hopefully with the things coming down to maybe 1 metre very soon, that will make your lives a bit easier within them work environments. But I would just say your hand hygiene is going to be vital, so you're not contaminating any surfaces that people could touch, and then having to wear some form of face covering. But it is going to be tricky for theatres, I think, to get back safely and have a safe working environment. And I think really production should be looking at how they can change their working systems, and it shouldn't be such a rush. I think we've got to realise that we can't go back to how we were working in March before. We have got to reassess because it is a new world. with this virus is not going away anytime soon, and people shouldn't be expected to do things how they used to be. People have to have a serious discussion about this. So I think as productions within theatres start ramping up, I think that's something that needs to be discussed very early on, that things are put in place to create a safe work environment for you, because yeah, you shouldn't be expected to. Current government guidance is social distancing is the most important thing you can do. PPE is right at the bottom, and productions really need to reassess if it's safe to work. And I'm sorry I haven't got a perfect answer for that. It's going to be a theatre by theatre decision, I feel, unfortunately.
Someone's asking, which disinfectant are you recommending, James?
I'm not. I don't have any specifics into like. We are getting every disinfectant thing you can imagine, because it's proven hard to get hold of in vast quantities. So we are having to get multiple different products. And I know Karen has been sending through all sorts of different products for her department and asking me to give them a quick review to make sure they're suitable. So I would just, when you do start looking at things, just try and get the safety data sheet, any manufacturer information, just to see what it's saying it can be used on and what properties it has. And then if you do work on a production that has a health and safety advisor, just pass it to them to make sure they can have a quick look over. So there's thousands of products out there for you to use. Another good thing to look at is the EPA website. So it's an American website, but they have a list of different products that they've approved for disinfectant properties. That's worth a look at. Some of the product names might be American, but they'll have UK equivalents. So I think Dettol has, I can't remember the American version of it, but it's cleared in America and it'll be cleared to use here. So that's a good place to look for.
Okay, we'll try and look that up for everybody and find that link and put that
I'll
up.
just say that try not to use your strong IPAs on pleather or you know, your furniture, your chairs and things, because if it dries out, then that's going to split, and then that's going to allow more viruses to get into the chairs. So it might be better just to cover a chair or use a gentler cleaner that doesn't have alcohol in it but still can kill viruses.
James, I just wanted to ask a question, because I used to do this. I used to use my hand steamer on the pleather chairs, the hairdressing chairs. How effective is that now? Because I used to just do that especially when you get hairspray stuck on them, because it was a really easy way to remove it by using a steamer.
Yeah, I think it's a good option. Obviously, try and get the steam as hot as you can and as close to the chair as possible, so that it's going to be as effective as you can get it. But yeah, I think a steamer is a good option to go down, one that I would advise.
We're going to put 2 more links up. I'm not sure if Sammy's done them yet. There was a really interesting article in the New York Times about if the virus and how it sticks on clothing and hair and shoes and newspapers. So it was just an interesting read. And then there was another one, The Lancet, saying about hair as well. So we'll just pop those links up there. There's a few questions on here a bit more sort of industrial questions, as in, you know, working times and scheduling and things like that. They're more to do with your production to production. This is just health and safety, just for you to get an idea of what James and Karen's production is doing at the moment, which is like the first one really to go back, which is quite interesting. I'm just looking. Is there anything else? Have you seen anything else, Karen, that's...
Well, I can say, you know, Vivian, hi Vivian, the impact on the day is, I mean, there's been lots of discussions about how we work and how we go forward, and there is an enormous impact. Everyone coming onto site will have to be tested. So that is, you know, like a minimum of 7 days, I think, at the moment. And then if we are in close proximity, if you're in the green zone, that means we will be tested 2-3 times a week. So the impact is huge, but you know, Universal have been fantastic, and the operation at Pinewood at the moment is unbelievable. So, you know, you walk through a system where your temperature is checked and then you go to work. So they're processing, I think they processed 250 people in under an hour today. I think that's what he said earlier. Is that right, James?
Yeah.
So they are embracing this. We are trying to get the job done. We are trying to make it safe for people to go to work and with confidence. So, you know, but there is an impact, and schedules are being changed and scripts are being rewritten to accommodate this. But the shooting day shouldn't be longer, because that would then impact your mental health and your tiredness. So the day shouldn't be any longer because of it.
I'm just conscious of time now, because it's gone past. We were only going to try and stay for an hour doing this. I'm going to say, first of all, thank you so much, James.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your time, because I know you've had a really long, busy day today.
No problem.
And if there's anything else that you feel that we can share with the community here, and you've got any links, let's do that. That would be marvellous. Thank you. We're really sorry we haven't been able to get through everybody's questions. It's really hard running a webinar, that's what I can tell you. There's so many bits we're trying to read at the same time. So I hope that's answered, well, we hope that's answered some of the questions. We've been trying to get a health and safety officer on a webinar now for weeks. So we're so grateful, James. Really are. And I know it's very difficult to answer these questions and make sure everything is covered. So I think it's really back to what we were saying, is just minimise the risk, isn't it? Multiple defences, minimise the risk and build confidence.
Exactly.
So everybody, I'd like to say thank you, and I hope you enjoyed that. And remember, if there is any other questions that we've missed, please just drop us a line, or not us. We can pass on the information. Any questions you've got, we'll try and find the experts for you and trying to get an answer for you as quickly as possible. So we're going to end it.
One last quick one from Sammy, our fabulous secretary, who hasn't had any
madly.
How safe is UV to the individual? Is there any risk of skin cancer?
Yes. Yeah. So this is why I would advise against UV wands, because there's a real risk if you're not using it correctly, you could damage yourself. So this is why you need to make sure if you're using UV cabinets or anything like that, you make sure they are from reputable manufacturers and you use it correctly as per all the instructions. If it's from a reputable manufacturer, CE marked, and has all the right documentation, it's hopefully brand new, or you know who it's come from, and you keep the doors locked whilst you're using it and all of that, then the risk to you will be, well, there won't be a risk if it's used correctly.
Also, just to say, I did record this. James knew about this, so we will try, and anyone who, I know there were some people that had some technical issues trying to get on, so we will make sure this is available to all members. Not quite sure how that's going to happen yet, but we will do that. If you have a look on the chat now, we'll leave it up, and I won't shut down the Zoom or the webinar just yet, so you can actually take copies of any of this. But what we will do with all our links, we'll make sure that they're on one document on our website, so you'll be able to get information there. And it's usually, you just go onto Hera Makeup Branch website and click COVID-19, and it drops down and it will take you straight to the page. If not, follow, there's a great social media team, isn't there, Karen? They're doing an amazing job, and they're running Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and I'm sure they'll pop everything all out on there for you as well. I hope that's great. There's more messages coming in as the minute goes on. My phone's going, it's going.
Can we let James go? He's had a very long day.
James, go. Thank you so much, James. Lovely to talk to you, and probably see you on some job somewhere.
Yeah.
See you tomorrow.
Right, thanks, James. Bye.
Bye.
Hi.
So how long do we leave the chat open for people to?
We'll just leave it just for a minute, and people will start, like, as everybody's just going now. They're slowly going off now. Thank you, everyone. Here we go. Yes.
I'm just trying to scan to see if there's any answers that we didn't.
There were so many questions. I can't type at the same time.
My fear is people will put items inside a UV box because of the shape of product or strength of bulb, will assume that the item is COVID free just because they put it in a box, but it depends on the shape of product.
I think check the manufacturer's instructions.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sammy, for putting all of that. And is Leanne with us?
Yeah.
And Leanne, thank you.
Leanne's been on the chat telling people, popping all the information over.
Thank you very much, ladies.
Thank you.
I'm here as well. I've just want to come in at the end and say well done, everybody. And I've been recording it all, so I'm going to find a way of getting this uploaded onto the website as well.
Fantastic, thank you.